Later in today's show, we're going to talk to an expert about an important issue that New York families are confronting. It's become a bit of a lightning rod unexpectedly over the past few weeks of this race. But first, as always, let's get to some news. And joining me now is Morgan Mackay, a political reporter for Fox 5 New York. Welcome back, Morgan.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Hi. Okay, so as we always do on a Monday, I want you to tell us, where were the candidates this weekend? What were they doing? We can always get a sense of maybe where they think their campaign is by what they're doing over the weekend. And we've only got like 3 of them left, so everyone is important. Where were they?
Oh my gosh, I feel like I cannot wait until this is over, but at the same time, it's been fun to cover an experience of a lifetime, right?
Yes.
But Zohran Mamdani, the front runner, he's been definitely keeping up a speed that I think is impressive to some. He's been doing a lot of campaign events. He went to an annual dinner over the weekend for the American Bangladesh Police Association. He went on a community walk of Chinatown with local elected officials, with community leaders. He also ran a 5K to help bring resources to Gaza. And he also went to a church service and more. And then Curtis Sliwa also really ramping up his campaign as well. And what's also very impressive for his campaign is that a political strategist over the weekend who's really well known, who has represented both sides, he actually started a super PAC to help support Sliwa. So he's going to be receiving, presumably, more donations as we enter in these final weeks. And they already dropped their first ad using money from that super PAC. And then Andrew Cuomo, he held, from what I could see, about one event this past weekend where he went out to Queens and he talked about his plan to increase the number of specialized high schools. He wants to bring additional specialized high schools over to Queens as well.
Mamdani tonight is apparently holding an event he's calling Our Time Has Come. What's it about? Who are we expecting to show up there?
So it's unclear right now. Was supposed to send a list of speakers a little bit earlier today, but he has been really trying to highlight some of the main platforms of his campaign, and that's the free buses, freezing rent for the rent stabilized apartments, free childcare. Those are likely going to be some of the top issues that he's going to highlight at his rally today, and probably try to get some of his supporters inspired as they enter these last few weeks of the election. But we're going to have to see. Presumably, he's also going to have some elected officials there, and we'll have to see who else.
Okay. And what do you know, Morgan, about this New York Post report alleging that Mamdani's campaign may have taken roughly $13,000 in illegal foreign donations?
So the New York Post was a little maybe misleading in their headline, because if you go down into the story itself, it says that it's, quote, potentially illegal foreign donations, as you mentioned.
Okay.
These donations were received by Mamdani's campaign from people who live in different countries. So, for example, his mother-in-law donated to his campaign and she lives in Dubai. Now, it's not illegal because he still has a chance to return those donations. And out of the 13,000 donations that he's received, he has returned, and he has about 7,000 left to return. So about half. And his campaign says that they plan to do so. I'm sure they're probably just working through the paperwork. But speaking to the Campaign Finance Board, for example, they're saying that these aren't marked as illegal yet because, again, they're still working with the campaigns, sifting through them. Every campaign has some sort of illegal donation to it, not necessarily nefarious, because it falls outside of the rules.
And then they're given a chance to return it before it becomes an illegal donation, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay,
and Mayor Eric Adams went on social media over the weekend and tried to sort of harp on this a little bit. He said that he had received he mentioned how he received illegal campaign donations and he was blocked from receiving public matching funds, but that doesn't quite tell the whole story. He received public matching funds, but he was also accused of soliciting, which means like going out and trying to get those illegal campaign donations, and also setting up a straw donor scheme. And he was actually charged, which triggers a whole different process. And his campaign was required to turn over paperwork, which they never did. And even a judge withheld that ruling by the Campaign Finance Board not to give him public matching funds.
Yeah, so very different, very different. And yeah, good point about the post and the headline. Always good to read a full article,
Yes.
everyone. Morgan, sit right there, and because I've got some more questions for you about everyone's busy campaign schedule. Right after the break, more Battleground NYC when we return. We're back with more Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. And let's get back to more news once again with Morgan Mackay, political reporter for Fox 5 New York. Morgan, according to the New York Times, the same business leaders who've been fundraising against Mamdani are now reportedly speaking to him behind the scenes. These folks were once very skeptical of Mamdani, in some cases hostile to his campaign. What do you make of this? Are they just sort of seeing the writing on the wall of this campaign, or what?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think some business leaders want to meet with him in case he is elected. They want to have a good relationship with him. They want to be able to bring to him some of their concerns as well right off the bat. At the same time, I think some of them are also saying that they're just cautious. They want to meet with him, of course, in case he is elected, but at the same time are also trying to help explain to him and to others where he's standing and also
Mm,
what's going to be best for them. So I think altogether, I think they're still cautious, but at the same time, they're at
mhm.
least willing to have a conversation with him. And as this article mentioned, Mamdani is also willing to call them up and make that first move as well.
Yeah. I am getting, because I'm a nerd, I am getting so excited for the debates. I cannot wait. I will have my popcorn,
Yes.
maybe an adult beverage,
Yeah.
right? But like this is where we all get to see the top three candidates together answering tough questions at the same time and really making the case for themselves. What do we know about the debate? When, where, how, who's moderating, all the things?
So the first debate is going to be held by NBC, and I believe a reporter from Politico is also going to be joining them. And they have been preparing for weeks now. One of my really close friends who works at NBC, Melissa Russo. She's going to be one of the people asking questions, and I know she, shout out to her, has been really, really poring over these questions and doing a lot of
Mm,
studying for weeks, even months now. They've been
yeah.
really having meetings and talking about just what questions are best to ask all three candidates. I agree with you. I am very excited to see just how all three are going to operate on the same stage. We saw during the primary, Mamdani and Cuomo go after each other, but
Hmm.
now it's on such a wider basis, and it's going to be really just them. And then, of course, Curtis Sliwa. So
Hmm.
I'm curious to see if there's any sort of a little bit of alliance between Sliwa and Mamdani going after Cuomo, and to see how that might work, since Sliwa has said somewhat nice things about Mamdani in the past. He has said that he admires his work ethic. He admires
Mm,
how much he puts into himself with everything. And Mamdani
hmm.
is also, he mentioned a couple times, just slightly nice comments as well about Sliwa. So I'd be
Mm,
interested to see if maybe they tag team a little bit to go against Cuomo, or if it's going to
hmm
be just a free for all and then all attacking each other, which is probably a little bit more likely.
Well, with a race this sort of static, it's been fairly static. Now, he moved up 10 points in the polls since Eric Adams dropped out. But Zoran Mamdani, since the primary, has had the lead. And you just have to wonder, okay, this is it. If you're Andrew Cuomo, if you're Curtis Lee, this is the chance.
Yeah.
This is your chance to appeal to as many voters as possible. You couldn't, in a city as big as New York, meet every single one. So this is really important, and we could see some big personalities. We could see some big zingers. We could also be some not great moments, for a campaign. These debates can make or break a race. So I'm really excited. I don't think you said what night it's going to be though. Just make sure people know.
It's this Thursday night, so we
That's
are
right.
only have to wait a couple more days. And as you mentioned, SE, knowing, watching debates for so long, I mean, this is really the moment people can make or break their campaign. Just a couple weeks before the election,
Yeah,
this is when people really start paying attention to the election as well. So I think we could
that's
really
right.
see the needle start to shift one way or the other.
That's right. We've been covering this and talking about this for months, but most people, the debate is like a marker. That's when they say, okay, I'm tuning in now to this race. And that's true of presidentials. I've worked on presidential debates as well. And everyone knows the stakes. This is when a lot of people tune in for the first time in an election. So these could be really, really huge. One last question before I let you go on the issue of Gaza. Mamdani um opened the door on Friday to possibly giving President Trump some credit for the Israel Hamas deal if it is enforced, if it delivers peace. Any word yet on if he's done that?
Yeah, Mamdani over the weekend said that his praise of the Trump administration's peace deal in the Middle East really depended upon whether or not it was lasting and just some of the stipulations that went along with it. Today, so far as of 4 o'clock, he still has not issued a statement in support, or excuse me, just he hasn't issued a statement
Yeah.
surrounding the hostages being released. I know Cuomo's campaign's really highlighting that right now.
hmm
And both Sliwa and Cuomo came out with a statement pretty much immediately as soon as that happened this morning. So we're still waiting to
Yeah.
see what Mamdani has to say.
I'm sure he's carefully crafting it because people will be really, really paying attention to what he has to say about this. Okay. Morgan McKay, thanks as always. Great to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you. Thank you.
Okay. And coming up next, education has always been a key issue in the New York City mayor's race. But could it be a deciding issue this year? We'll find out more. Battleground NYC after the break. We're back with more Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote. The issue of education has been something of a sleeper in this campaign. It's always important to New York City families in this campaign and others, but it's been sort of engulfed and overshadowed by the larger issues of affordability and housing and public safety. Well, that is until the frontrunners around Mamdani suggested he might end the New York City Gifted and Talented program. Well, then people started paying attention. So, joining me now for the bigger picture is Matt Gonzalez, an educator, policy and research expert, and former member of the New York City School Diversity Advisory Group. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks for having me, S.E. Great to be here.
Okay, before we get into this issue, help me set the table because there's a long history with this gifted and talented program. So explain to people who might not live in New York City or who might not know what it is. Explain the program, what is it, and how it's been used historically in the city.
Sure. So, the Gifted and Talented program in New York City, actually, the first classroom was established in the 1920s. And that was really intended to serve exceptional learners in New York City. Little fast forward to the 1950s, there was a national kind of effort to expand Gifted and Talented, really in response to the Cold War, right? And to the Americans' educational effort to meet the Russians, right? Fast forward another couple of decades, in the 1970s in New York City, we started to see, and really across the country, we started to see gifted programs as kind of a tool to address or respond to integration efforts across the country, right? And not in a positive response, but in an effort to mitigate or avoid responding to gifted program or to integration across the
Hmm.
country. And so there is a kind of a legacy in New York City of using gifted programs to create enclaves of privilege, particularly for white and affluent families in the city. And so, in the New York City, we know that there's no unified G&T curriculum. There's no standards
Mm.
that kind of clarify what gifted education is. What we know is that it's more work, faster paces, and smaller class sizes, often for New York City students.
But it's also really helpful to some students, especially who can't afford private school, who are really, really talented, but can't afford private school, can't afford extracurricular kind of educational programs. How helpful has it been as a track for some New York City public school kids?
Well, the current gifted programming in New York City serves about less than 4% of New York City students. And without knowing every one of those students,
Yeah.
I know that those students certainly gain benefits and opportunities from those programs. It often sets them on a track for more exclusionary programs that only, really kind of cater to students who are part of this pipeline of kind of opportunity. The thing is, the way that New York City has done gifted programming up until very recently, was really premised on a standardized test
Mhm.
that 4-year-old children were taking, which pedagogically is inappropriate. The National Association of Gifted Children often argue that that was not an appropriate tool. So there has been a use of this program to create, again, enclaves of students who are already able to get test prep or have already existing privileges. And of course, a sprinkle of students who are economically disadvantaged will benefit from these programs. But again, it's such a small number of students that it actually hasn't had a tremendous impact on the larger opportunities for New York City public school students.
So why get rid of it then if it hasn't had that big of an impact?
Just to clarify, Mamdani's proposal is not to actually get rid of gifted education in New York City. It's actually just to expand it, or to shift when students enter the program away from when they're 4 and 5 years old, but to when they're in third grade, which is consistent with proposals that the advisory group that I sat on in 2017 and 2019 recommended. Is consistent with what experts around gifted education have argued for many years. So there's no intention to get rid of the program. It's actually a chance to shift the way that we engage in the program, because young kids that at that age should not be separated away from each other in educational settings.
So what's the resistance to Mom Donnie's idea then?
Well, New York City is a beautiful city of traditions, right, and of practices that we have gotten used to, that may not always be the most beneficial for the breadth of the city, right, and
Mm.
so. As I said earlier, right, this program serves less than 4% of New York City public school students out of the nearly million children,
Yep.
right? And so that small percentage of students and families have often an outsized voice. Those programs cater to predominantly white population, which is already kind of underrepresented across the system. And so when, a privilege or a resource that is benefiting a small group of families and students is argue that we should shift it, though there's always backlash, right? There's been backlash to integration efforts for the last 70 years, not just in New York City but across the country.
Okay, Matt, stay right there. I've got some more questions for you after the break. More Battleground NYC when we return. We're back with Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote one more time. With the bigger picture is Matt Gonzalez, educator, policy, and research expert, and former member of the New York City School Diversity Advisory Group. So, Matt, I went down a rabbit hole today because I'm thinking about this issue of education and Zoran Mamdani, who's young enough to be some of the candidates' son, right? And he doesn't have kids, which is fine. He is young, he has time. But every mayor I found since Ed Koch had children, like I said, we don't hold this against Mamdani, but are there things from your standpoint as an educator, as someone who works in this space, that he might not just get as someone who has never had children in a New York City public school?
Sure. And so, I don't think that having children being a good mayor of New York
Yeah,
City.
of
I
course.
also do not have children, right? I've
Yeah.
spent the last 20 years in service of young people. My hope is that Zoran's commitment is consistent with that. I think what I've heard from his campaign is not necessarily this kind of narrative that he knows what it's like to have children, but I think he knows what it's like for people his age, who's a few years younger than me, and people my age, right? Who
Yeah.
are afraid to have children in this city because it's so incredibly unaffordable, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm in a wonderful partnership, thankfully, and we've talked about children and talked about how scary it is to try to raise children in this city, right? And I think that Zoran's campaign has communicated that really powerfully,
Yeah.
which is why I think he won a majority in the primary. And also, I don't know what it's like to have to get up early, drag a kid to school at 7 in the morning, and to think about what are the scary
Yeah.
possibilities of unaffordability in the city. So, like, I recognize, and I am imagining he recognizes that too. I don't think that necessarily undermines one's ability to be a good leader, to be a good mayor. But I also know that this city, I have friends who have children in the city, and it's not easy, right? It's very difficult. And
Yeah.
that's why the childcare
Yeah. Yeah.
priorities, that's why the rent freeze priorities, I think resonated with so many different people.
I think you're right. And I think that is his touchstone, being a young, maybe one day parent, really understanding that
Yeah.
fear. But I think if I'm, if you're looking just generally at the experience component of, running a city as giant and complex as New York, maybe some voters are looking like, well, what does he really know? What does he know about the arcane public school system and all of that? I mean, I think these are fair questions, and maybe it'll come up at the debate. What are some other issues, Matt, that in education that New Yorkers are contending with right now? Like, if you don't live in New York City or you don't have kids in New York City, you might not know what are the other like day-to-day issues that are concerning voters. What are some of those?
Yeah, and I appreciate you for asking this question because, the same week that the kind of kerfuffle around the G&T
Hmm.
programs came out in response to this survey that the Mamdani team responded to, we also, heard a regular story that we have about 150,000 students who are either homeless or housing insecure in our city, right? And
Right.
so we are facing, again, connected to the challenges of affordability in the city. And in addition, right, like I'm part of a coalition of Yorkers for racially just public schools. We surveyed 1,000 New Yorkers this spring, asking them about their education priorities. We asked them to give us their top three. The top three were fully and equitably funded schools, safe and supportive schools. Again, making sure that safety is not just about the about mental health safety, restorative practices. And the third one, interestingly, was tied, but it was integration and inclusive schools, right? So
Mm,
people are thinking about how integrate or how segregation has
mm,
impacted their children's educational experience. So we highlight those priorities. We also released a comprehensive policy roadmap that we have given to all the mayoral candidates to make sure they know what New Yorkers told us, and as experts in this field, that we uplift the roadmap to make our schools better. And in the context that the Trump administration is attacking our schools already federally through funds,
hmm.
and with the presence of ICE and immigration attacks on our schools and communities. And so there's a lot happening, and
Yeah.
we're going to need a mayor who's really committed to fighting for our public education.
And along those lines, as more people we know are moving to the suburbs, they're leaving New York City because it's not affordable. And you don't want to do that. You want people to want to be able to stay in New York City, but they're moving to the suburbs for lots of reasons. One is that going to public school is much less complicated, right? You don't have to worry about lotteries and all those kinds of things. You
Right.
just show up. Really. How would you tell the next mayor to improve schools specifically to keep New Yorkers, including New Yorkers of means who don't have to stay, who can or afford, private school, to sort of opt out of making the New York City public school system as good as it can be? They can afford to opt out of that. What do you want the next mayor to do to keep people in New York City and in New York City schools?
Yeah, and we have always in New York City centered policy decisions on the most privileged, because of this fear of white flight, right?
Mm,
And what we know, some analysis I did right after the pandemic, is that Black families are leaving New York City, and it's not because they don't have G&T programs. Actually, it's because the city's too
yeah.
unaffordable. And post pandemic, the city did not respond to some of the concerns that they expressed, right? So what I would tell folks, what I've told all the candidates, is that we need to support the most vulnerable in our city, those who don't have the privilege or choice to leave,
Yeah.
to build something better that is for them. And also, obviously, listening to all families is really important and critical. But we can't center our policy decisions on those who threaten to leave us when it's not their, what they want.
Matt Gonzalez, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you tomorrow and every Monday through Friday for more Battleground NYC, the fight for your vote.
Thanks for watching Battleground. We're now joining Live Now's nonstop stream of live and breaking news.
And we're just about 20 seconds away from landing burn start, where we'll first ignite the Center 13 engines, then bring that down to 5 to slow down the booster for landing. And finally, that will come down to 3, and we'll cut all of them off while we're still about 200 meters in the air. So booster is going to see a bit of a harder
Booster landing, we're started. booster landing burn shutdown.
And there we heard it, booster landing burn shutdown. We saw a 13 to 5 to 3 V3 demonstration, and into the water we go. Wow, that was absolutely awesome. If you can even hear us right now, congrats to the whole SpaceX team. So far, so good for today. That was incredible.
All right, great stuff, guys. I'm jealous of the crowd. All right, back to ship. Ship's still making its way. We've got a little under 2 minutes left in this ascent burn, so we've got all 6 Raptor engines still firing. So the next major milestone we're going to be looking for is SECO. That's our second stage engine cutoff. That's should be coming right at about 8 minutes and 58 seconds into flight. So we've got about 1:20 still to go. Really cool to see Booster go through that landing burn. That was one of our really key demonstrations we wanted to try and do today. That's mimicking what we're going to be hopefully doing. Oh, we just got our sonic boom, sounds like, from the booster coming back. All right, less than a minute to go. So we are going to see the 3 RVACs, the vacuum optimized engines, shut down first, and then we'll shut down those 3 center engines. So we should be a little under a minute until SECO. Just a reminder, this is putting us into a suborbital trajectory, so we're intentionally just going slow enough that we're not going to achieve full orbit. This puts us on a course where those engines shut off, and no matter what, we're coming back.
Starship is in terminal guidance.
In the Indian Ocean. All right, terminal guidance. So we should start seeing the shutdowns come up in just a couple seconds. Less than 30 seconds to go in this ship ascent burn. All right, RVACs have shut off. 3 more to go.
Ship engine cutoff.
All right, all ship Raptors have shut down.
Nominal orbit insertion.
You just heard nominal orbital insertion, so we are on the path that we wanted to be. So we've got a ship back in space, a whole lot planned for it, lots more still to come. Great seeing Super Heavy make its way to the water, but I'm excited to see what ship can do in space. How's everybody doing down there?
Yeah, if you could hear the crowd behind us this whole time, people are definitely happy with how the day's been panning out so far. Definitely exciting to see Starship safely in space, and super pumped to see all the team's hard work in action here today.
Yeah, and we guaranteed it at the start of the show, but it has been an awesome day so far. It's crazy. All this has happened in just 10 minutes. All the objectives were met on the booster, including that V3 style landing burn. So now all eyes are on the ship as we get ready for our in-space objectives. But we've got a few minutes until that next milestone, so sit tight, enjoy the views, enjoy the space jams. We'll be back at T plus 16 minutes for payload deploy.
Okay, as they step away for a brief moment while they wait for what they call the payload deploy, let's take the opportunity to take our second break of the hour here on Live Now. You've been watching SpaceX launch the largest rocket ship ever built. Massive piece of machinery launching into the sky, and then you saw that booster gently lift itself back down to Earth so that it can be reused. That's a feature of so many of these SpaceX rockets. We see that exact same feature being used on the Falcon 9 rockets that we see SpaceX use to launch the Starlink internet satellites into orbit so frequently. Let's hit a commercial break. We'll bring you out to some more coverage in 2 minutes. All right, you're watching Live Now. I'm Austin Westfall. We continue to monitor the SpaceX launch, but I also want to make you aware of another event happening in New York City. This is an event that we plan to take live as soon as we see Zohran Mamdani step up. We plan to carry his remarks as they're happening. In the meantime, what we're going to do is keep listening into that SpaceX event. Unclear to me. I think they might still be playing some of that jingle music. Let me listen. So they are still waiting for the next big chapter of this launch, if you will. It sounds like we hear some noises from the crowd. Let's keep watching this SpaceX launch. And again, as soon as we see Zohran Mamdani take the stage in New York City, we plan to take his remarks live. In the interim, SpaceX.